Not sure if I like this angle. It's a little revealing of things. What's up, kids? How are you doing today? I would like to dive in today, right into the topic. No preamble, no nonsense, no stalling for time while I think about the words and how things are going. Definitely not doing any of that. Quick sip of coffee, fire me right up. Got half and half in the coffee today. Treating myself. Day off, you see. Got treats. Treat yourself if you got a day off. I'm going to go to the MoMA later. This is my plan of action for the day. If you don't know, the MoMA is the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So far, I gotta say, it's one of my favorites. I'd say definitely top 3. But then I like art. So, tracks, that makes sense of the things which I would like being the places which I want to go, but I haven't been for a little while, and I'm looking for a little bit for inspiration. If you can see in the video, there's a very large canvas behind me, and I gotta fill that canvas with some stuff, so I'm gonna go look at some stuff. It's not something I really do, generally, when I make work. Work which I make, generally, comes from an idea I have had. It comes from me thinking, I like that. It triggers something in my brain, something in my mind, and I think to myself, I should go do more with that. I should play with that. I should toy with that, notion, that concept. That it's like if you get like a cat, a toy, like a little ball or a catnip or whatever you want to call life of cats. If you give that and then allow it to do stuff, then eventually it'll either lose interest or it'll find new things to do with it. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know a cat's going to be interested in a box. Are they interested in all boxes? Are they interested in some boxes? Is there a specificity to it that cats have? Is there a preference? Is there a cat box preference in any way, shape, or form? Has anyone figured this out? We don't know. We'll never know because we can't speak cat as much as we'd like to. I've said no preamble, and yet we have preambled greatly. I'm going to make a statement. Bear with me. I'm going to make a statement, and then we're going to detach from that statement, and we're going to deep dive into it and see what we can actually figure out. I may make some enemies doing this. I'm aware of that. In the art community, probably the most. But I think, and here's the statement, I think most artists are unwilling to admit that the majority of art is accidental. What do you mean by that, Graham? Let's dive into that. It's a thought I've been having a lot recently. There's this conflict, or maybe just this miscommunication or misunderstanding between what it takes to create something, anything at all, visual, musical, conceptual, practical, anything, and what it takes to sit down and make it, and the art world itself. And I'm guilty of this. Not guilty. Maybe guilty to adding to the confusion, which is, par for the course with me, I'm afraid. But I think of it as, people ask me about work and ask me about our work and what I think, and I think, well, all art's intentional, right? All of it. And what do I mean by that? I've just conflicted with myself completely. I've said all art is accidental. Most art is accidental. The majority of art is accidental, but all art's intentional? How does that work? That's completely wrong, right? You can't have two things like that. You can't be like everything's wet, nothing's wet. Though that makes complete sense, actually. If everything's wet, then nothing is wet. Because wet is a state. It's a state of being. Fish don't know they're wet until they're dry. Think about that. Think about that profound statement which I just said. It's not necessarily that profound. It's really not that profound in any way, shape, or form. So what do I mean? Well, let's track it back. What do I mean by all art is accidental? Or majority of art is accidental? So I got thinking about a painting I did recently. Recently released it. It's called Vulture. It's a deep dive into my own frustrations with creation of fine artwork and content and media for online and AI engines and the ability of people unwilling to invest time and effort into learning things or exploring their own catharsis because they're so afraid of their own catharsis. So we end up with these kind of content vultures, but also I feel like a content vulture. There's a lot of layers to it. It's what I do. I won't go too much into it. I need to embrace more of that Lynchian idea of when someone asks me to explain something, I just say no. And yet, here we are talking about it. Because I want to explain it. I want to try. Because I feel like the work doesn't explain itself enough. And yet people get it all the time. And I'm like, oh. But anyway, Vulture. Very mixed media painting. It's very dark, green, grey. Some reds in there. Probably some purples too. Probably can't see them. And it's drippy. A lot of my art's drippy. I don't know if you noticed this. A lot of it's drippy, messy. Some would describe it. Muddy is like how I like to describe my art, because I use acrylics and I don't use mediums the correct way. Again, part of the course for me not using things the way they're meant to be used. But it's very much just a collection of paint on a canvas. You see how easy it is for me to deteriorate my own work. It's nothing important. It's just, an exploration of the societal pressures of artists and people who want to create. But it's just paint on a canvas, really. Everything's just paint on a canvas when you break it down. When everything gets broken down back to the reality, well. But it's a lot of drips, right? If you watch the time-lapse, there's a time-lapse video on the channel of me creating it. A lot of it is drips. I had a basic idea, I guess is what I'm saying. When I started making that, I had a basic idea. I knew I wanted to make a vulture. I knew it was going to look somewhat like it looked. But realistically, there was no real way for me to know how the paint would behave when I'm creating it. There's no real way for me to know how gravity will affect the thing I'm creating. I can have a good idea. I've experienced gravity. I'm 35. It's there. Gravity is the reason why my hand doesn't work the way it's meant to work right now. I've experienced gravity. So I have some prediction. When I do a drip, I don't expect it to go sideways. I expect it to go downwards, providing the canvas is facing the right way. So I was painting it, and I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, this is accidental. The intention is there in the sense of I'm putting paint on a canvas, but it's accidental. I'm making this completely accidentally. It's based on where the paint lies, and then I decide if I like where the paint lies, and I come back to it and I think, well, yeah, that looks pretty good. So it amazes me when people then look at the work and they say to me, oh, how do you do that? How do you mix those colors? How do you get the tones all right? I'm like, I don't know. Half the time, I don't know. I mean, I'm colorblind, but also half the time, I just don't know what happened to create that sheen, that tone. There's obviously science involved. You could probably map it to science, but the way certain things fell at the certain time, the movement or lack of movement I put into each individual brushstroke, I'm trying things, is my point. I'm trying to explore and see and go with what happens. And I think this is what a lot of, especially established artists, are completely unwilling to admit. In any genre, is that most art is accidental. It is not this theory, which I think non-artists have, or non-practicing artists have. I'm kind of trying to move away from the non-artist and artist divide. Right? I think most people are capable of art. It's the Remy Ratatouille theory. Everyone can cook. Not everyone should, but everyone can cook. Everyone can art. Not everyone should fine art. But this idea that when people look at things and they think, oh, I could never do that. Really? You could never splash paint and then make a decision of whether you like where the paint splashed? You couldn't experiment with different paints? You couldn't experiment with different techniques? Because technique isn't necessarily, mixing paints together correctly, putting them onto a page, doing it line by line. Sometimes technique is just pure expression of just, I'm going to put some stuff here and see what happens. That's the misunderstanding. And I think people at a high level don't like admitting that there is some level of chaos and some level of accident involved, because I think they think it diminishes their own talent. Whereas being able to block something out and create something with a level of accident is a talent in itself, right? It's that experimentation. It's like if you got someone in the kitchen and they're trying different flavors together. Most food, I'm going to digress. Most food as well, most recipes are accidental. I think about this a lot. I mean, a huge amount. I cannot understate this. I'll be cooking, and I'll be thinking to myself, chop, 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 you know, saute, fry, whatever I'm doing. And I'm not going to do sound effects. Blend. I'll be doing these things, and often I think to myself, who in their right mind discovered this, right? Who discovered that a potato is edible? Because when you discover potatoes in the wild, they are not edible things. They are not tasty morsels in any way, shape, or form. Which means at some point, someone, hunter-gathered, found a potato and thought, right, well, we got to try it. And then they ate it, and it wasn't great, probably. Don't know what the palate of a person discovering potatoes was, but probably wasn't great. So then they experimented with it, or maybe they found it cooked. Post. Oh, that's my alarm. Accidents. Maybe they found it cooked. I often think about this one, of that most things are found, or most cooking is accidental, in the sense of someone leaves something for too long, it gets overcooked, someone puts something into fire, or a fire rips through a place or a space, and then afterwards someone discovers something and goes, oh, this isn't, it's behaving different to how it used to be. This potato is now soft, it's now malleable, it's no longer this rooty vegetable that we once knew. It's now something fresh, something new. Oh, well, how can I repeat that? How can I make that happen again? And I think most art just goes like that. There's that clip which circulated online around the Beatles, when the Beatles were kind of figuring things out in their recording sessions. I can't remember the name of it, but there's that video of Paul McCartney, and I think he's playing a song, and he's gradually figuring out. And it's so rare to capture that on film, right? I think that's what shocked people, and that's why it was great to see, because for every artist, they sit in their room and they sit in their studios and they think to themselves, and they're tinkling along and they're doing all the things, and they're thinking to themselves, yeah, and then they'll change one thing, like yeah, and then all of a sudden it just like streamlines down to, this is the song. This is the sound. This is the sound which we were looking for and we were trying to create, and we did it. Congratulations. And you never get to see that. You experience it. That's the catharsis of art. That's the catharsis of creating. You get to experience it and you get to think of it like that. But for the public to see it is so rare. And I think they think non-action based creatives that's a skill, that's a talent. Paul knows how to do that. He knows how to play guitar. Therefore, he knows how to streamline down to that flat line of creation. Maybe that's a phrase I want to coin. The flat line of creation. Because it is. It's like a piece. It's like a chaotic piece where you can't ignore it in any way, shape, or form. It's the same as when you're sketching. You draw a circle, you draw another circle, and you keep going and you're going and going until eventually you have the tone, right? You have the rage and emotion and all that thing in all these differently shaped rounds, until eventually one of them is the most pronounced and is the shape which you want to move forward with. And it's that flat line tone of just everything. But all that sketching is accidental. You don't really know how the paper's going to move. You don't know how your hand's going to perform. You don't know how anything's going to... The pen could leak. And then what? You have more thickness in some parts to others? Maybe that's something you like. Maybe that's something you didn't know you needed. I keep seeing a lot of clips online recently as well about musicians and how they'll just come in and they'll say, oh, hey, so you know that song which I made? Oh, yeah, it's a preset. It's a preset on this machine, and then I just ran that machine through something else. I think I saw, what's his name? It's like Goldie or someone. Basically, the creation of drum and bass, right? The creation of that sound was done by using equipment incorrectly. Distortion was done by using equipment incorrectly. You've got, an amplifier made to make sounds larger. They found that if you ran sounds through this amplifier and tweaked a few things, you could make it fuzzy. You could make it grungy. And for someone somewhere that went, ooh, we like that. We like that rhythm. We like that vibration. And some people didn't. And thus, genres were formed. I think this is what I'm trying to get at. Is there is so much fear and ego in creation and non-creation spaces that we just need to be willing to admit that most art is accidental. So what is most art being intentional about then, Greg? You just spent 20 minutes discussing about how these are all just mistakes. All art's mistakes. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to make the Mona Lisa. No. People wake up and they think, I'm going to paint something. I'm going to paint this picture of this woman. She's going to come and sit, and then we're going to see how it goes. And then midway through, I'm going to decide I'm going to put mountains and rivers in the background. That's what's in the Mona Lisa, by the way. If you ever look at the background of Mona Lisa, it's fascinating. It's almost more fascinating than Mona Lisa herself. I'm just throwing that out there. And there's also, I think there's more interesting paintings than the Mona Lisa. People just like it. But so what do I mean? That all art is intention. Well, the intention is twofold. Let's put it that way. The intention is that, one, you wanted to create something in the first place. I always say this. When it comes to drawing. This is probably the most important rule if you're trying to teach yourself any kind of skill within the art world. Drawing, painting. Know what you want to make. Know that you want to draw a house. Know that you want to create a portrait. You're doing Inktober. Know what you want to draw the next day, the day in advance. Because as soon as you have that, your brain starts generating ideas. It starts making things without you even thinking about it. You think dog. Boom. 20 pictures of a dog just went off in your head. Dogs you know. Dogs you don't know. Dogs you've imagined. All of that comes together. Whether you even know you're doing it or not, you might not recognize it. And then the next day, when you come to draw, you're trying to draw a dog from your brain. And it's always going to be better than if you just go blank piece of paper. What do I draw? I guess I'll make a line here. I'll make a line and do that. That's always going to slow you down. That's just learning a skill. That's learning a technique. What you got to do, though, is strike that balance between the two. Strike that balance between, I'm going to draw a dog, but I'm going to try and ignore these images in my head, which I've already created. And maybe, if I'm not getting close to that, I could experiment with the shape of the dog and the style of the dog. Maybe he's wearing a cravat. Maybe he drinks an iced latte. Maybe not. Maybe he's militaristic. And maybe he's strapped, going out into the war zone. Who knows? Those are the two dog versions which just spun off the top of my head. War dogs and bougie dogs. It's the divide of society, if there ever was one. So that's the first part. The first part is intention to create. You can have an intention to create, but you can also not. You can just do some stuff. You can make some sounds, see what comes out. The second part is the more important part, in my personal view. It's the intention to keep. When I say that all art is intentional and all things are intentional in art, it is more focused on what I think makes good and bad creations. And I think this is what critics really focus on. Is I can put a bunch of drips on a page. I can put a bunch of drips on a canvas. I can create something which is a visual. I choose what goes onto that canvas, what stays on that canvas. If I do something, I can erase it. I can paint over it. Same with any illustration or drawing I do. I can put people, spaces, animals, everything I put into that, the mise en scène, as it's known, is part of the art. Therefore, if I choose to leave it in, I am choosing to make it a part of the piece. I am choosing to say that this is indicative of the thing which I'm trying to present. So, all art is intentional. And this is what separates the good and the bad, is that when you look at a thing, if the audience is not getting the initial intention of the artist because they're too distracted by something else, that's bad art. Art's interpretive, Everyone gets their own thing. We can all look at the same picture and get different emotions and feelings to it, but we'll all get the general sense. We'll all get the general view, whether that's through reading the title, whether that's through just looking at the piece. We all have this sense of connection with it, and it's the artist's responsibility to create that connection. I think this was my problem with, AI generative stuff and whatever they were called, NFTs and the monkeys and all that kind of stuff. It was just props. It was animals and props. Oof, noises from outside. Can we stop reversing? Maybe? There you go. It was all animals and props, which at the start of that creation, accidental. We switch animals and props. We just want to mass produce as many as possible. And then accidentally, that became in itself conceptually art, because it became a visual view of the appropriation of art into content and content into media and money and how that all tracks on. They didn't intend it to be that way, but now it's a piece in itself if it's presented as that piece. So that's what I think I want people to understand and go away with, maybe, if they listen to this. If you all listen to this. Is that most art is accidental. It's made up through a series of experimentations and mistakes and thoughts and ideas which have been tried. I'm currently creating a piece with a friend of mine who likes to look at things as a whole. Likes to look at things as this needs to be perfect first time out of the box. And I keep saying to people, and I keep telling people all this time, we have to be willing to fail. We have to be willing to look at something, try it, doesn't work, don't worry about it, move on, keep what we like, and move on. And that's all art really is. The amount of times I repaint and paint a line, or sketch and sketch a line. Other times musicians play a sound, and they're like, ooh, did not expect that sound, but I like that sound. Is numerous. Most art is, I keep going back to all art. Maybe all art is accidental, but most art is accidental. And most, if not all art, should be intentional. Most art is accidental. All art should be intentional. That's the rule. That's the rule which we can apply. Okay? That's what I'll think about today when I visit a museum. And whether I like a piece or not. I'm trying to discern if I like a piece. Because you get to choose. You get to choose what you keep, what you throw away, what you present to the world. And then, once it's out there, you don't have control of it anymore. Providing the majority of people get the message you were putting out, then you did good. You made the right thing. Doesn't matter how you made it. Who cares if it's because you were walking along through your house and you accidentally dropped a paintbrush, and the way the paintbrush landed looked great. Who cares if it was because one day you plugged in your guitar, you made a sound, and you're like, oh no, someone's been messing with the dials, but it sounds so good. Who cares? It's up to you that you chose after that to keep moving with that sound, to keep pushing the paint from where it was, to try that again, see if you could do it again. That's all my point is today. But I hope you have a relaxed one. I hope you experiment. I hope you take the time to appreciate that most of what we do is just accidents. Accidents and experimentation. It's just what we intend to keep after. That's really the important bit. I'll talk to you guys then. Bye.